Hola amigos, here we're going to talk about stem changing verbs. And now we have avoided stem changing verbs so far in the preterite because there aren't that many that do it. There's plenty of them that do it, but not as many as that stem change in the present indicative. So we've already learned a lot of different stem changers. We've got O to UE and E to IE and U to UE. There's the one who got we've got E to I, or there's actually I to IE as well. But we don't do that as often in the preterite. In the preterite, it's a little bit, it doesn't happen as often as it does in the present. So it's not to say it doesn't happen, and it happens often enough that we definitely need to worry about it. And it happens with verbs that are frequently used. So this is what you need to have in order to have a stem changing verb in the preterite tense. It has to be an IR verb first off. So that's going to eliminate a whole bunch of your verbs out there. That's going to eliminate 90% of your verbs are gone. We're not going to stem change automatically. Even if it stem changes in the present tense, it doesn't matter. If it's an IR verb, is the only time you're going to stem change. So if you have an AR verb or an ER verb, you don't need to worry about the changing of the vowels because it isn't going to happen. Not in the preterite. So when we had a verb like contar, it's an O to UE stem changing verb, but because contar is an AR verb, it does not stem change. It stem changes in the present tense. This becomes yo cuento, tú cuentas, él cuenta. But in the preterite, it's an AR verb. So in the yo form, you get conté, contaste. We get contó, contamos, contaste, contaron. It's just a regular verb. It's an AR verb, so it doesn't stem change. AR verbs do not stem change, nor do ER verbs. So perder, remember perder from before? Perder is a stem changing verb, E to IE, pierdo, pierdes, pierde in the present tense, perdemos, perdes, pierden. But in the preterite, it's just going to be, it's an ER verb, so we use a normal ER endings, perdí, perdiste, perdió, perdimos, perdisteis, perdieron. So no stem change. I didn't change this at all in any of the forms. Jugar, it's a U to UE again, but doesn't matter. Juego, juegas, juega, jugamos, jugáis, and juegan in the present. Stem changes there. But in our preterite, it is just going to have, it's a gar verb, so it does have a spell change in the yo form. Okay. But the rest of it is just normal JUG ending. Jugaste, jugó, jugamos, jugasteis, jugaron. But that's our stem. We don't change the stem. But if we have an IR verb, then we could potentially stem change. Now, IR verbs, it can't just be any IR verb. It has to be an IR verb that also stem changes in the present tense. So you're not going to have a verb like escribir that is not stem change in the present tense. It's not going to stem change in the preterite then. You're not all of a sudden going to turn into a stem changing verb. Escribí, escribiste, no change. It's all regular. But if you do get an IR verb that stem changes in the present tense, like we can see here is sentir and dormir, those are both IR verbs and they're stem changing verbs. And remember, if you see these little vowels next to the infinitive, that's usually a clue to tell you these are stem changing verbs. And so this first one, IE, that is the change it has in the present tense. So in the present tense, sentir becomes siento, sientes, siente. It is spelled with the IE. It is the E of the stem becomes IE in the present tense. We get siento, sientes, siente, and then the nosotros is not going to stem change. We don't stem change in nosotros. Sentimos, sentís, and sienten. I know this is present tense, so we're not worried about present tense right now, but just showing you the difference that we have. And here we have an IE. We have that here as well. We have it in the to form, in the yo form. We have the IE in each of these conjugations. It's an E to IE stem changing verb. That's where this IE comes from. That's why we're saying that. That means in the present tense, it has an IE stem change. But then you look at the next section and it's got just the letter I. And that letter I is saying that that's the change that happens in the preterite tense. Now, let's go ahead and look at our conjugation here. We already have it all the way conjugated out, sentí, sentiste, and that's what you should expect it to be, right? You take S-E-N-T, which is our stem, and then you use the regular ER and IR stem changing, I'm sorry, not stem changing, you use the regular ER and IR, in this case, just IR, even though ER and IR are the same. You use your IR endings that here, let me go back to my regular verbs here, and I'm going to copy these. Here are the endings that we use. And let's put them right here. These are still the endings we're going to use. This is the chart that you'd expect to use. They're still IR verbs. They're all IR verbs. These are the endings we're going to use. And then S-E-N-T is our stem. So you take that and then you add these endings. And if you were to, put S-E-N-T in front of this accented I, you would come up with this, sentí and sentiste. And then nosotros, we would come up with sentimos and sentisteis and vosotros. But in the third person, that's the only part we're going to see a change. And instead of having S-E-N-T, we turn it to S-I-N-T. It is a stem change of E to I. And then look at the ending here. We've got I and O with an accent. Sintió. Sintió. We've got the I-O ending, which is exactly what we'd expect to be there. We have the I-O ending. In the third person plural, we'd expect to be ieron, I-E-R-O-N, and that's exactly what we have. But in front of it, we've got our stem. You'd normally expect S-E-N-T, but because we are in the third person with a stem changing verb, that stem changes in the present tense as well, and we have an IR verb, that means we are going to stem change. So you need to have all three of these conditions have to be true. It is an IR verb that does have a stem change in the present tense, and it is in the third person. So if it's not an IR verb, there's no stem change at all. If it's not a stem changing verb in the present tense, it's not a stem changing verb at all. If it is in the first person, the yo form, or the nosotros form, if it is in the second person, the tú form, or the vosotros form, it will not stem change here either. It has to be in the third person, el, ella, usted, anything third person singular, ellos, ellas, ustedes, or anything third person plural. Then we stem change. So that's one kind of change we could have. Any verb could be E to I, or the other option is it could be O to U. Now it's done the exact same way. We take our stem, dormir, D-O-R-M is our stem, and you add your normal endings to it. In the first person, we do that in the yo form, dormí. The nosotros, first person plural, dormimos. Second person, right here, normal stem plus iste, exactly what you'd expect it to be, dormiste in the tú form. Second person plural, vosotros, dormisteis. We just take our normal stem, add our endings, and then we've got our conjugation. When we get into the third person, now we have all these contingencies met, these requirements met. We've got our IR verb, stem changes in the present tense, and we've got it in the third person. We've got right here in the third person, ele, usted, ellos, ustedes, third person. So instead of using D-O-R-M, we change the O to U. And here we get dormió, same regular ending, and dormieron, same regular ending. Now, I didn't point this out, but notice the UE first. That's just because that's what the change is in the present tense. Duermo, duermes, duerme, and duermen in the boot. Dormimos, dormís in the nosotros, vosotros. But O to U is the change that we care about in the preterite tense. Now, there's only two that actually do this, that are O to UE in the present and O to U in the preterite. So there's only going to be two that are O to U. It's dormir and morir. And those are the only two that go O to U. But there are plenty of verbs that go E to I. And they might be E to IE in the present tense, or they could also be E to I in the preterite tense. Pedir, por ejemplo. Pedir, to ask for, to request, that verb. Let's write this one out. Pedir is an E to I in the present tense. Oops. My bad. All right. So it's E to I in the present tense and E to I in the preterite tense. And the yo form in the present tense here, I'm going to show you. Pido, pides, pide, but pedimos, pedís. And this is the present tense. Present tense. So it's E to I. But in the preterite tense, it's also E to I, but remember, only in the third person now. Pedí, pediste. And then here we are going to do our change because we are in the third person doing the el, ella, usted, él, pidió. So It's still just like sentir, and that it's e to I. The only thing that's different is in the present tense, we've got e to IE for this verb, and just is still e to I in the present tense as well. But in the preterite, it still ends up doing the exact same process in that we have PED is the stem, which is what we'd expect it to be in the first and the second person, singular and plural. And then in the third person, eleo usted, we change that E of the stem to an I. It's an E to I. All right. I hope you found this useful, but again, let me refresh your memory here, or they'll do a little quick review. We've got only time you're going to stem change is if you have all three of these questions, these requirements are all true. It's an IR verb that stem changes in the present tense and it's in the third person, singular or plural. If you have that, you're going to stem change. When we stem change, we just change the single vowel. Either it's going to be E to I or it's going to be O to U. And we're still using our regular endings. Bueno, espero que este video sea útil para ustedes. Hasta luego.